Gurvinder Ahluwalia, founder and CEP at Digital Twin Labs, who is going to discuss triumph over technology. Please put your hands together.
Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you. You know, I want to take a temperature of this room. I'm reasonably new to Dubai, and I'm absolutely new to this brand and this conference. It's a wonderful audience, except that about 50 of them are sitting outside, and another 30 are in the expo. I don't know if there's a way for them to come into the room, because I will invite some questions, and I'd like to listen to you all as well. I think for the previous panel, you or somebody was trying to ask some questions, so I want to extend that opportunity at least during my slot. The temperature I want to take of the room before I dive into this is how many of you are from a technology background? How many of you are from a economics, finance, social sciences background? How many of you are from a something else, not those two categories? All right. I think I saw some hands go up more than once. I don't know mathematically whether that is correct or not, but we'll keep moving. So I will try to speak to all of you, most of you, and the purpose of my conversation, even though I come from a computer science background, is to ground the discussions that we are hearing at this conference, not just the one that I'm going to invoke, but the one that we are hearing at this conference, and quite frankly, in the landscape of Web3 conferences. So that's going to be my responsibility number one, to ground it in some fundamentals, which are not technology, not computer science, but they borrow from economics, they borrow from commerce principles, so on and so forth. The genius of Web3 blockchain-based decentralized ledger technologies is not that they are decentralized, is not that they are blockchain specific. The genius is that they are a new formation, they allow a new formation of governance. And the other genius is that they provide the instrumentation for incentive mechanisms across that governance of entities. I will elaborate a little bit more in the pictures that I have. The second and bigger genius that is spurred because of technology is that these technologies have to work not in isolation and silos, but as a composite whole. Like in the previous panel, we were hearing about AI, we were hearing about, of course, blockchain and Web3. I will also introduce IoT. We all know about the cloud. These are all modern technologies, and they have to knit together as a composite whole, or think of it like as being the parts of a car, and you need all those parts to be in place for the car and the engine to be running. And the third, even bigger genius than that, is when we take it well above this technology plane of multiple technologies and intersect it with the economic principles, with principles from economics, from commerce, from social behavior. Without that, we are just grazing the surface, or quite oppositely, we are into the weeds of technology, and that's why it's no surprise, even though a lot of this disruption, and I'll come back to that word, has been around for 10 plus years, we still find struggles with it. We never found that much struggle in launching the internet. We never found that much struggle in launching, before that, the TCP/IP protocols. And I have an advantage, a little word of introduction about myself, in deploying what ended up at that time being the second largest network of the world at the dawn of TCP/IP and at the dawn of the internet. My name is Gurvinder Ahluwalia. I'm the founder and CEO of Digital Twin Labs. Previously, I was the CTO of IBM North America, where I had the privilege of co-founding the blockchain business and also co-founding the open source movement called Hyperledger under the Linux Foundation. And those events, by me, by a few others, of course, with IBM behind it, sparked a whole new movement towards blockchain, and that is its use outside of the cryptocurrency space into its applications of business kind of use cases, and I'll talk some about that. The Queen's Gambit over here doesn't necessarily refer to the Netflix movie that you've seen, which of course is a good one. And the Queen's Gambit, the opening move in a chess game, right, where White has a chance once White has moved from D4 and D5, C4, Black has a chance, Black's move, Black has a chance to take one of those points, one of those pawns, right? What would you do? So that is the Queen's Gambit. Depending on the move that you will make, it will decide the course of the rest of the game. Technology has made the first move multiple times in the last 4 or 5 significant waves of technology disruption that I have had the privilege of stewarding in the industry. The internet that I mentioned, after that the World Wide Web. I had the privilege of launching the first embedded wireless handheld device based on embedded Linux in the US market. Then it moved into the disruption of cloud and IoT somewhere in between, and now it's moved into the disruption of blockchain and more holistically what we loosely call Web3. So technology in all these progressions, and the earlier standalone speaker showed you some of those Web 1, Web 2 progressions. Technology makes its Queen's Gambit move. Now it is for the regulators, for society, for other players, for users, for businesses to decide how they want to interpret this move. Do they want to take the pawn out and the game will take a different course? Or do they want to figure out a different strategy and the game will take a different course? But when you go through this thinking, we've seen certain triumphs as a result of this chess game. And we've seen clear victories. We've seen the triumph of capital over labor, with enough discussion going around on automation. And I try not to use AI synonymously with automation. There are quite a few distinctions over there. The triumph of data over algorithms. When you have to design an autonomous vehicle, the number of permutations and combinations that vehicle has to sense are limitless. The data set, once it becomes limitless and the permutation combinations become limitless, you cannot go by code. Even though we hear this heart thumping, chest thumping of code is law, we have to be very cautious about how we project our messages and narratives to the new transformation that we are building for societal impact. So because those data sets are so big, algorithms cannot accommodate the finiteness of logic to accommodate all the possibilities. So you have to rely on data models, data sets, hence machine learning and AI models, as opposed to finite logic, which is what algorithms are. That battle is over. The other is the triumph of social over privacy. We've all relinquished our privacy in exchange for the social advantages we feel we have on WhatsApp and Facebook without necessarily naming any properties. We've given that up. We are trying to rein that back, which is why this question mark is there. And now we are on the next battle that is being played out, and that is the triumph of trustlessness over trust, which are terms that I'm sure you understand very well. What these triumphs and changes and this chess game is doing is really these disruptions are building the new foundations for society and new social contracts. There's much more elaboration to that, but I will just leave you with a little bit of a nugget that we can talk about offline. Sorry if the chairs are coming in your view like they were coming when I was over there. Let's look at the economics dimension, as I promised, that I want to ground the landscape of conferences, not just my talk, not just the talks that you have, that you are listening to, but also the other places and in your individual businesses, why this is important and why these disruptions are happening. The first point I will make is that technology, even though we say it's a technology disruption, it really is not a technology disruption. Technology doesn't disrupt. Technology enables disruption, but disruptions are best explained by economics. I'm a computer scientist, I know nothing about economics. So pardon my ignorance, I'm a learner as well, I'm a student as we go along. And in the last 20 years, since the World Wide Web, I've been leaning on economics, and more so now with Web3 and blockchain and tokenization, to understand what these Nobel laureates and very distinguished economists, two of them are Nobel laureates on the left and the right, have for us to learn from a technologist perspective, or even otherwise in our ventures and business. Ronald Coase did the work on transaction theory. How many of you have heard of him? All right. After today, it's going to be, I feel, really important if I do a good job for you to remember him. I respect the guy a lot. Rest in peace. In the 1930s, he came up with the theory of the firm, which basically described why a firm exists. These are like fundamental questions of economics and social behavior, nothing to do with technology. And he explained the existence and size of a firm based on transaction cost. I will transact with you if my cost of transaction is lower. Otherwise, I will transact myself, and I'll build an HR department myself. I'll build a marketing department, a media department myself. I'll farm out recruiting. So the transaction costs, if they are higher on the outside, I will take them in and my firm will expand, and vice versa. All firms today are based on transaction cost. When the internet happened, why the web went crazy is because it brought down the cost of doing transactions remotely with outside parties. And businesses fundamentally changed. Examples, bringing costs down, internet email, voice over IP calls. It used to cost me $4 a minute in calling from US when I moved there 35 years ago to my parents in India. $4 a minute for a starving graduate student. And now what does it cost me to call India or anywhere, any one of you to call internationally? Zero, right? So it brings, technology helps massively operationalize Ronald Coase's transaction theory. And if you look at the progression, we brought down the cost of tabulation, we brought down the cost of computation, and what we are now bringing down is the cost of prediction. Don't let anybody tell you that AI is about automation, even though one of the speakers said it. No offense to anyone. These are the discussions that are important and the debates important to have. AI is about bringing down the cost of prediction. It's not about automation. There are 20 other ways on how you can have automation without the risks and newness of AI, and the cost, I might say. Disruption cycles, what Carlota Perez, a professor in Argentina, says, is these cycles and bubbles not only must exist, but they are also predictable. How she figures it out, I don't know. It's a very dry book, but that's the main message of what she's saying. The third one is the most important for purposes of Web3 and blockchain and tokenization. Doug North is another Nobel Prize winner, the most recent. By the way, Coase's theorem on the left, in the 1930s, he wasn't given a Nobel Prize until 1970s or something. And he passed in, I think, at a ripe age of 95 or something. Doug North talks about the structure of organizations, and the structure of current organizations are rooted in like industrial revolution times. We're talking 300-400 years old, the structure of organizations, maybe in some cases even older. His argument, and obviously it's been accepted and received very well, is that you can organize without organizations. I'm leading up to a really important point, and hopefully you're picking up on it. Once again, you can organize without organizations. That should make you think, you don't need an organization in order to organize. A more prevalent example, shrunk, but banking has not shrunk. You take the same principle, it basically is saying that function should be higher than the form. If you are design thinking aware or experts, it talks about how form should follow function. That's one of the core design thinking principles. And in the jargon of decentralized transactions and blockchain and tokenization, you trust the process without trusting the entity. There's trustlessness from the previous page I'm referring to. So those are some of the fundamental three sets of things that I wanted to ground the discussion in. And now I move into the societal and commercial dimension. And in there, I also weave in the work that Digital Twin Labs has done. So if we look at why blockchain matters, and it matters because ledgers matter. People don't understand blockchain, but we tell them what a ledger is. Everybody deals with money. They know what a ledger is. We had trouble balancing our checkbooks all along for the last 70, 80 years, but everybody knows what a ledger is. And ledgers are important because they matter for society and commerce because ownership matters, identity matters, authenticity matters, authority matters, time matters, credentials matters, so on and so forth. You get my point. And these are all primitives on which society is based fundamentally. And commerce is fundamentally based. Truth matters, state matters, trust matters, all the jargon that we hear. We're not talking about individual technologies. We are now talking about concepts that are important to societal behaviors. I'm going to pepper in some examples of the work that we've done. For the Gates Foundation, I put together the blueprint for the use of blockchain, and might I add, in the second genius that I was pointing out, you have to look at it from multiple technologies as a solution, not just from blockchain. And that was blockchain, IoT for sensory movement of food in the supply chain, and machine learning because the compliance of United Nations and every country around the movement of food and nutrition is very, very complicated, and there are reams and reams of paper and PDF, and each specific to every country. You go to India, they've got a different story. You go to a country of Africa, they've got a different story. Europe, even though the EU has different, everybody has different stories, right, on their compliance and how their population should be fed. But what the world has agreed in the United States, in the World Food Program, in foundations like the Gates Foundation, is that human beings, all of humanity, whether you know it or not, we are automatically fed with what are called micronutrients, like iodine, like calcium, like ferrous, that are just essential, without which, there'll be a lot of bad stuff just to the wellness of humanity. So we put together the blueprint for the measurement, for the efficacy, for the supply, for the analytics of it. We did some work for a German automotive manufacturer for the use of blockchain for vehicle sharing, right? When you're sharing a vehicle, the ownership transfers. So that's why ownership, how can you do that? How can you change the persona of an identity when the vehicle moves from one ownership or custody to another one? Similarly, many of the automotive manufacturers of the world are using a standard which has been set by a standards organization called MOBI, or the Mobile Open Blockchain Initiative, for VIN number tracking and parts tracking that goes into the vehicle. 2 weeks from now, I'm speaking at a mobility conference in Amsterdam, and I'll be talking about some of the work over here, similar to this one. I personally volunteered, this was a volunteer, not a commercial project, when COVID broke out, like everybody was in a position like, how can I help, from my little world and expertise? And that was the use of decentralized identity, also called self-sovereign identity, for COVID health identification, like health passports, which was then absorbed into the Linux Foundation. And in the UK, they did use some of the work that we convened. For De Beers in London, we partnered with BCG, Boston Consulting Group, to deploy the first and the largest production running for the last many years called Tracer, and that is the blockchain-based platform for the global trading of diamonds. Now, those are luxury items, but there are multiple reasons, not just the value of the asset, but also to weed out blood diamonds, for anti-money laundering activity, for United Nations compliance of what's called the Kimberley certificate, where there's 80 signatory countries if they want to participate in the diamond business. And while we were actually doing this program, there was a massive fraud that happened in India. Incidentally, the country where I come from. Most of the diamonds, as many of you know, come from Africa. And then they actually go to India for polishing cutting. That's the capital of the diamond industry over there. So a lot of diamonds move around in the Indian market. A lot of diamond merchants there before they go to Antwerp. And that's the largest diamond exchange of the world. There was a $2 billion bank fraud by an Indian diamond merchant. Those of you who are from India might know the name. I don't want to pronounce it over here. And then he ran from the country and he's sitting in England and he hasn't been extradited. But here's what the problem was. Double spend. He went to one bank, say, I got these diamonds that have come in, I need to clean them up, and then I need to push them out. Give me some money so I can keep my factory running. This bank gave them the money. Then he went to another bank and he says, I got the same load of diamonds, give me some money, I need to. So he went to 2, 3, 5 banks, he took like 3 banks down in that process. Multiple banks attaching their lending to the same underlying collateral. Very, very important point in Web3. If we have all the conversations and we get all sprited up of tokenization and digital assets. In the case of real world assets, meaning a physical asset like a diamond, if we cannot attach the physical assets to the abstracted tokens and digital assets, we might as well not be doing any of this work until we can figure that out. Right? But that is what we are trying to now get into, and that was actually one of the cases in the work that we did for De Beers. Credentials for a US healthcare startup, early stage. We are doing credentialing of professionals for hospitals, medical professionals, and with MIT, Stanford, and University of Texas, my alumni in Austin. I live in Texas, by the way, in Dallas. We've done some work for the use of transcripts, diplomas on blockchain because they can be easily shared by other universities and by employers. For a Scandinavian shipping company, we've done work for the use of blockchain to track global shipping containers. Multimodal, meaning on ships, rail, and road, right, seamlessly. I will also confess some of this work, previous work was done when I was at IBM for a program that is called TradeLens. This is not that one. This is a digital twin lab program, different from that. I'm just going back to my IBM work called TradeLens, which was the partnership between IBM and Maersk. And the confession, I would say, it has my early fingerprints on it, but that collapsed about 4 months ago. That's publicly reported, which was really heartbreaking, but no surprise. And the reason it was no surprise goes back to the genius that I pointed out about decentralized technologies. They had no governance, multi-party governance. It was 2 principal owned, and there was no incentive mechanism. There was no tokenization to keep it endurable and running. For a US foreign currency startup, a little bit to your world, we were just talking. Conversion based on blockchain is work that we did based in this particular case of a private instance of Ethereum called Quorum, behind which JPMC, Morgan Chase is also behind that software distribution. For a Singapore startup, we've done work for geolocation to serve last mile delivery problem. So many other examples I wanted to give you a sampling. We have introduced a new service that we are now going after very passionately, and that is in digital and crypto forensics. If any of you are close to that area, I'd like to have a conversation with you afterwards. I'm getting into the pretty much the last section over here, and I said that I'm going to talk about converged blueprints. And these converged blueprints, this one is a little bit from the finance sector. When we do work in the financial sector, we unlock 6 patterns in financial environments. Liquidity, cash flow, risk mitigation, asset valuation, double spend, I pointed that example. Provenance is the preferred word instead of tracking and tracing. I prefer to call it provenance. It has much more loaded into it, and you can't have tracking and tracing is just one aspect of it. There's much more in provenance when we look at, and of course, auditability. Now, some quick examples. That's the example I cited. 2 billion bank fraud from double spend in a diamond trade financing. And there's one more over here. Once you have provenance, this is a key point. my friends. I started out work in provenance when I was at IBM. Me and a few others, we created the first proof of implementation of using blockchain outside of cryptocurrency, as I mentioned. And that incidentally was done on Ethereum version 0.5. When I came to our booth at CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, the largest of its kind in Las Vegas. And I did not know the red comment on the right side. We were not thinking in terms of tokens. We barely trying to understand what blockchain means to enterprises and get past that hump. But in the last several years, in my role and experience at Twin Labs, it's really important not just to have supply chain and provenance. Once you have that, that's really the magic, but that's really the foundation. And on top of that, you can build secondary markets for buying and selling, for reselling. You can build marketplaces for trade finance, for invoice financing. For those of you who are in the finance side of the industry where I am now, and I'll be glad to learn from you a little bit more, so we can make those intersections. These intersections, which are happening here in the conference, but should happen in the field of implementation between disciplines. I cannot stress to you enough how important they are. Right? So that's another one. This is another picture on more specifically on the diamond. You know, $57 billion of value is added when a diamond comes out of a coal and a rock in a mine and before it makes it to the market. $57 billion of value is added. But at the same time in that process, you end up with 70 million of insurance fraud in US alone in the diamond industry. And I don't even remember the numbers. I don't even think they are measured in terms of dollars, in terms of blood diamond and terrorist activity financing and those kind of things. Here's the cookbook. Here's the playbook we follow. We've done this for multiple supply chains. I talked about nutrition, talked about food, talked about diamond, talked about supply chain and automotive. We have a playbook now. We can take that playbook and apply it to any supply chain sector. Right? Of course, there are nuances which we want to factor in from those who are the domain experts of those industries, which I'm not. But that's basically the cookbook that we go after to put together the strategy, put together the architecture, and then actually the POC and the implementation from there. This is a blueprint, a conversion blueprint of the automotive industry. I prepared it also because I'm headed to speak in Amsterdam at a mobility conference. But the reason I put it over there and highlighted, but note that it is at the same peer level with equal respect to IoT, to cloud. You can put machine learning. You can put your favorite technology over here, right? They have to exist at that peer-cousin relationship level for this to become a family of a solution, and not just a silo of technology which is not going to go anywhere, right? So we have to look at blockchain as being a seeding, an engine in an overall solution. On top of that, you got data, you got these other services, and then you have applications and use cases like car sharing, like interactive rentals, like the wind example I pointed out, like supply chain provenance and so on. So once we have this foundation, we are still laying out the foundations of what, in my earlier part of a career, laid out the foundations of the internet. And then look what we can make out of this when we work on it together. So look at it from that perspective. My last slide, in summary, we look at it from a system of systems, right? It's not a system, it's a system of systems. Blockchain is not the only game in town, right? And it is not just a chess. I wanted to provoke the discussion that technology will make the first Queen's Gambit. And then it is for a bunch of people to see how they want to respond to it. There are other technologies and social sciences. Those are the three genius points in an escalating order that I mentioned to you. Governance and incentives, I come back to the remarks I started with. Are the only magical things that blockchain have introduced. Yes, cryptocurrency, all that. We got to stop. We got to tone down the madness. I'm not saying stop. Otherwise, somebody's going to beat the hell out of me. We got to dial down the speculatory behavior because every time there is cryptocurrency speculation and madness, blockchain checks out of the door. Customers who want to use blockchain, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do it. This is in the mess. That's what happens. That's what happens. Okay. So we get blocked in the progression that we are all trying to advance. The blueprints and the builds that labs we do. We create these POCs. We deploy platforms. We've done the blueprints of the coexistence of Web 2 and Web 3 and cloud. And IoT, like in the automotive and the Gates Foundation example. And machine learning, AI, like in some of the examples that I cite. We look at it, they all have their own roles. No one thing is going to solve the solution for you. And we've done this for startups. We've done this for large enterprises, like De Beers I mentioned, for Freddie Mac, which is a large mortgage institution in the United States. Over $2 trillion, 40% of US home mortgages go through that institution. We help put their blueprints for the next generation marketplace together. And then I'll close with the remarks that are so apt and to the point that I elaborated, that Eric Schmidt, the ex-CEO of Google, said, and I know this portion is getting blocked for you. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the yellow portion is important. And he says, it has become clear that one of the blockchain's greatest advantages, and that is a lack of connection to the world outside itself, is also its biggest challenge. And the world outside itself, I throw my own coloring on top of Eric's statements. And the world outside itself is a world of other technologies. And the world outside is also a world outside of technology, and that is economics and social sciences, which really explain social behavior and social adoption of technologies. I promised I'll open it up for questions. Maybe the organizers will allow me the latitude to take in one or two questions, please. Sir, can somebody quickly run a mic down to the gentleman? Can you run a mic down to the gentleman, please? Yeah. It's being recorded, so we want your voice on the air. Not just mine.
I don't know. Is that on? Okay. I think you implied immutability in there, because I did see that on one of your slides. But something for me, and you're talking about blockchain, and thank you for sharing all your wonderful use cases, but something that matters, privacy. And I did not see that addressed. And I get a feeling all of those solutions that you're talking about are more the business, but what about the individual that's at the end of that identity and all of the tracking that you're doing on us? Does that come into play with the solutions you're implementing?
Yeah, absolutely. What's your name?
My name's Dan.
Dan? Okay, let me just rein in the questions, that way I know how to pace my answers. Who else? You got a question there?
Hi, my name is Munish. Just wanted to ask around the use case of insurance, and if you can maybe give some more experience or elaborate on what you were discussing.
Great. I will do. Thank you. And one more question over there. I'll take three in, and then I'll roll them out.
Hi, my name is Sebastian. I would like to know what are currently the biggest hurdles for you that you see midterm to implement all these blueprints and move forward.
I'm not sure I heard if somebody help me. I'm not sure I heard the entire question. The implementation of the blueprint?
Yes, so what is the biggest hurdles or problems you see?
Sebastian. Okay. Let me just finish these if we have time. If I'm allowed time.
Can we just take the three questions we have? Hello, Gurvinder. Hello.
Wherever you are, Kate, I'm listening to you. Oh, there you are.
Hello, lovely. Yes, if we can take three questions, because we have to get on to the next session.
I'll finish it up. Manish, quickly to your question, right? Insurance. Insurance is a large part of diamonds, right? Insurance is a large part of usage-based automotive. In fact, insurance tech is actually an area where I won't say necessarily blockchain, but sensor technology, IoT, is being used to monitor, sometimes surveil, driving behavior. I just got done with my app in my new insurance policy for looking at usage base. It brings down the cost of underwriting. In supply chains like diamonds, where there's important stuff, it brings down the cost of underwriting for an insurance company to know where is a diamond, at what time, in the hands of which, so they can nail it down to the custody in case there is a claim. So that's also the difference between tracking and tracing and provenance. To the question on privacy, real quick over there, Dan, thank you. It's a big topic. Reason I don't have time, but I'll finish up on that. And then I'll come to your last question over there, Sebastian. So when we started the use of blockchain in business, it had to be privacy. That's why they started out as private blockchains, and they continue as private blockchains as opposed to public blockchains, because that's how enterprises roll. What has happened increasingly, the industry has become more sophisticated. We now have zero-knowledge proofs-based techniques where you can introduce very surgically privacy within public chain networks. The other quick data point I'll leave you, and then we'll go to Sebastian's question on the hurdle, and then we'll finish up. These numbers may not be correct, a little bit dated from quoting this. Salesforce did an analysis a few years ago that in an enterprise only 6% of data is sensitive. So we have to be very surgical. You can't say that it's enterprise, all the data is private. Only 6%. We have been very surgical about it. So there is massive advances in the privacy topic to combine private blockchains with public blockchains. And we can talk more about this. Last question over there on the hurdles. A lot of hurdles, Sebastian. If you see my back, I've got like lashes. I just look like I'm all put together right now. But there are a lot of challenges. The challenges are, number one, in terms of integration with enterprise systems. As I said, blockchains cannot exist in a whole. They have to integrate with other systems. Number two, the question on privacy is a big one. Number three, and I'll leave you with three, there are more, is how do you bring the ecosystem together in large corporations, large ecosystems, right? How do you get everybody to participate, bring their data so that it can be trusted, and then have the right governance and incentive mechanisms? To me, what I pointed out as the magic of blockchain, quite quixotically, is also one of the biggest hurdles in bringing it to large-scale organizations. But the ones who have done it, they are prevailing and doing very, very well. Thank you so much. I'll take the other question offline.
Thank you, Gurvinder. Ladies and gentlemen, big round of applause. What a fantastic session.